The day I graduated was supposed to be the proudest moment of my life, the day every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every silent tear was finally supposed to mean something. I still remember standing there in my cap and gown, my hands trembling slightly as I adjusted the tassel and looked out across the sea of faces filling the auditorium. Families were everywhere, smiling, waving, holding flowers, balloons, cameras raised high, ready to capture one of the most important moments in their child's life. But my eyes kept going back to the same place, 2 seats right in the middle of the row I had reserved for them, my parents' seats, empty. At first I told myself they were just late. Maybe traffic had delayed them, maybe parking was difficult, maybe they were still making their way inside. I kept checking my phone, hoping to see a message saying, "We're here" or "We're almost there," but the screen stayed dark. Around me, everyone else seemed wrapped in joy and excitement, hugging their families before the ceremony even began. While I stood there pretending not to notice the hollow ache spreading through my chest. Then my phone vibrated. For 1 second, relief washed over me. I smiled before I even unlocked the screen, but the moment I read the message, that smile disappeared. "We can't make it. Your brother had something important come up and we're celebrating with him. We're proud of you, we'll talk later." That was it, no apology, no explanation that made sense. Just a cold message, sent minutes before I was about to walk across the stage and receive the degree I had worked for over the past 4 years. They skipped my graduation to celebrate my brother. And 6 months later, I sent them one photo that changed everything. To understand why that moment hurt as deeply as it did, you need to understand what my family was like growing up. This wasn't just about one missed ceremony. This was the final crack in something that had been breaking for years. In my house, everything revolved around my brother. From the outside, we probably looked like a normal family. 2 parents, 2 children, a decent home, family dinners, birthdays, holiday pictures, smiling in matching clothes. But inside those walls, there was always an invisible line drawn between us. My brother lived on one side of it where everything was brighter, louder, and more important. I lived on the other side where being overlooked had become normal. He was the center of every conversation. If he scored a goal in a school match, it became the family's biggest celebration of the week. My parents would take him out to dinner, call relatives, and talk about it for days like he had won a national championship. If he got average grades, they would praise him for trying his best. If he made mistakes, they excused them with, "He's still figuring things out." Meanwhile, I learned very early that my achievements came with silence. When I brought home top grades, the response was usually something like, "Good, keep it up." No celebration, no excitement, just expectation. I was the child who was supposed to be responsible, mature, and self-sufficient. The one who didn't need attention because I was doing fine, and somehow doing fine became the reason I was never truly seen. I studied while everyone slept. I stayed up late finishing assignments, preparing for exams, and working toward a future I hoped would finally make my parents proud. I missed outings with friends, skipped parties, and poured every ounce of myself into school because I kept telling myself one thing: one day they'll notice. Graduation wasn't just a ceremony for me, it was proof that every sacrifice meant something, proof that I had made it. Proof that maybe, just maybe, for once my parents would look at me the way they always looked at my brother, with pride shining in their eyes. I told them about the date months in advance. I reminded them again and again. They promised they would be there. My mother even asked what color flowers I liked. My father said he was going to record the moment I walked across the stage. For the first time in years, I let myself believe this day would be different. I imagined stepping onto that stage and hearing them cheer my name. I imagined looking into the crowd and seeing them smiling. I imagined finally feeling chosen. But as I stood there in that crowded auditorium, surrounded by families celebrating together, the truth hit me harder than anything ever had. I was never going to be their priority. And the pain of that realization would stay with me long after the ceremony ended. When the ceremony finally began, I tried to force myself to focus on the stage, on the speeches, on the sound of applause echoing through the hall. But my eyes kept drifting back to those 2 empty seats. Every few minutes, hope whispered that maybe they would still walk in, slightly out of breath, apologizing with embarrassed smiles. I held onto that thought far longer than I should have. Even as students around me pointed excitedly toward their families, even as parents waved flowers and phones from the audience, I kept searching the crowd for the faces that never came. Then they called my name. For a split second, everything around me blurred. I stood up, smoothed my gown, and walked toward the stage with the kind of heaviness that made each step feel unreal. The applause was loud, but it didn't feel like it belonged to me. I forced a smile as I shook the dean's hand and accepted the degree I had worked for over 4 exhausting years to earn. Cameras flashed from every direction, but there would be no video from my father, no proud tears from my mother, no voices calling my name from the crowd. As I stepped off the stage, my phone vibrated again. This time it was a picture. My brother stood in the middle of a decorated restaurant, grinning beside a cake that read, "Congratulations." My parents were on either side of him, smiling wider than I had seen in months. My mother had one arm around his shoulder. My father was raising a glass. The caption from my mother read, "Your brother's promotion dinner. We'll celebrate yours another day." I stared at the image until the words stopped making sense. Another day. As if the day I had spent years working toward could simply be moved to a more convenient time, as if the moment I needed them most was interchangeable. I didn't cry there. I think I was too numb for tears. Instead, I sat through the rest of the ceremony feeling hollow, smiling in photos with classmates, congratulating people whose families surrounded them with flowers and hugs. While I stood alone, holding a degree that suddenly felt heavier than paper should. When I got home that evening, the house was empty. They didn't even bother pretending they were coming back early. Hours later, I heard the front door open, followed by laughter spilling down the hallway. My parents and my brother came in carrying takeout boxes and leftover cake, still glowing from their celebration. My mother looked at me and said, almost casually, "Oh good, you're home." How was it? That question broke something inside me. How was it? I looked at her, stunned, waiting for some sign that she understood what she had done, but there was none. My father set his keys down and said, "Don't make this into a big issue. Your brother's promotion was unexpected, and opportunities like that deserve to be celebrated." I remember saying, my voice shaking, "So did my graduation, my brother." Without even looking up from his phone, shrugged and muttered, "It's just a ceremony, just a ceremony." 4 years of stress, pressure, sleepless nights, and sacrifice reduced to 4 words. When I told them how hurt I was, my mother sighed like I was being unreasonable. "You're the strong one," she said. "You understand these things better than he does." That sentence stayed with me, the strong one. It was always the excuse they used to justify neglecting me, because I was responsible, because I didn't cause problems, because I didn't demand attention. They had convinced themselves that I needed less love simply because I asked for less. That night, I went to my room and stared at my graduation gown hanging over the chair. The cap still had the tassel neatly pinned to it. My degree sat on the desk in its folder, unopened. I should have felt proud. Instead, I felt invisible. Something changed in me after that. I stopped trying, not in life, in them. I stopped waiting for their approval, stopped hoping for their praise, stopped telling myself the next milestone would finally matter. I finished packing within a week and moved into a small apartment closer to the city where I had been offered an entry-level position at a fast-growing company. The apartment was tiny. The paint was chipped in places and the kitchen barely fit one person, but it was mine. For the first time, I was living in a space where my worth wasn't measured against my brother's. The next 6 months were the quietest and most transformative period of my life. I poured everything into my work. I arrived early, stayed late, volunteered for projects others avoided, and slowly built a reputation for being dependable and sharp. My manager noticed. Then the senior team noticed. Within months, I was promoted to a role that doubled my salary. I bought better clothes. I furnished my apartment. I framed my graduation photo, the one where I was smiling alone. At first, I kept it because it hurt. Then I kept it because it reminded me of who I became after that day. Meanwhile, my contact with my family faded into occasional unanswered messages. They barely noticed at first. I suppose they assumed I was simply busy. But after months of distance, the calls started coming more often. My mother left a voicemail asking why I had become so cold. My father texted, "Family shouldn't drift apart over small misunderstandings." Small misunderstandings. That phrase made me laugh in the most bitter way. Then came the real reason. My brother had lost his job. Apparently, the promotion they had skipped my graduation for had ended badly. He had made a series of poor decisions, and now he was unemployed, behind on bills, and back living with them. Suddenly, they wanted to reconnect. Suddenly, family mattered. My mother called again, this time sounding softer than usual. "We miss you. Maybe you can come over this weekend. Your brother could really use some advice." Advice, not an apology. Not accountability, just another expectation that I would once again be the stable one who cleaned up after everyone else's choices. I didn't argue, I didn't explain. Instead, I waited until the next morning. I stood in my apartment, sunlight pouring through the window, and looked at everything I had built in 6 months: the framed degree on the wall, the promotion letter on my desk, the keys to my new car beside my laptop, the life I had created without them. Then I took one photo. In the picture, I stood beside the large window in my office, dressed in professional clothes, my graduation frame visible behind me and the skyline stretching out in the background. On the desk was a nameplate with my new title. I sent it to the family group chat with one line: "This is what happened after the day you didn't show up." No anger, no insults. Just that. For several minutes there was silence, then my mother replied first. "Oh my God, my father sent a single message. We didn't realize, but that was the thing. They should have. That photo wasn't revenge, it was proof. Proof that the moment they broke my heart was the moment I stopped needing them to tell me I mattered." After I sent the photo, my phone stayed silent for what felt like forever. I kept staring at the screen, watching those 3 little dots appear and disappear, as if they were finally struggling to find words after years of never needing any from me. Then my mother called. I let it ring, then she called again, and again. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to pick up. I didn't feel that old instinct to explain myself, to make things easier, to be the understanding one. I just sat there in my apartment, looking at the framed graduation photo on the wall, the one with my smile hiding a broken heart, and the 2 empty seats in the blurred background. Eventually, I listened to the voicemail. Her voice was shaking. She said, "We didn't know you felt this way." That line hit me harder than anything else. Because the truth was, they did know, they just never thought it mattered enough. No parent accidentally misses the most important day of their child's life and then celebrates another child instead without knowing exactly what message that sends. Maybe they didn't realize how deep the wound would go. Maybe they didn't understand that it wasn't just about one ceremony. It was about every birthday where my brother got the bigger celebration, every achievement that was met with silence. Every moment I was told to be mature while he was allowed to be the center of everything. That graduation day was simply the moment all those years of hurt finally had a face. A date, a memory, a pair of empty seats. A few hours later, my father sent a long message. It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever received from him. He said they had made mistakes. He said they thought I was independent enough not to need them. He said they were proud of me, but as I read those words, I realized something strange. I no longer needed them. That was the hardest and most freeing truth of all. For so many years, I had lived for their approval. Every late-night study session, every exam, every sacrifice had been tied to this quiet hope that one day they would finally see me the way I wanted to be seen. But somewhere in those 6 months, I had built a life where their validation was no longer the foundation of my worth. I had learned to celebrate myself. I had learned that sometimes the people who fail you the most are the ones who accidentally push you toward becoming stronger than you ever imagined. Do I still love them? Yes. That's the complicated part. Pain and love can exist in the same heart. You can miss people who hurt you. You can still wish they had chosen differently. You can forgive without forgetting. I don't know if what happened can ever be fully erased. Some wounds don't disappear, they simply become part of your story. But what I do know is this: the day they skipped my graduation was the day I stopped waiting for permission to be proud of myself. And maybe that was the beginning of my real life. Because sometimes the people who overlook you teach you the most important lesson of all: how to stop looking for your worth in someone else's eyes. That one photo wasn't revenge. It was closure. It was proof that I survived the heartbreak they caused and turned it into something powerful. So now I want to ask you something, and I really want your honest answer in the comments. Tell me honestly, would you ever forgive parents who chose one child over the other?